Another reason that you would be looking into commercial property in 2025 is the understanding of GST. Now, if you are a residential investor and if you don't collect GST, because in residential property you do not collect GST, the rent is GST free. Because the rent is GST free, any expense that you do on top of that residential property, then the GST actually comes from the rent itself. Whereas in commercial property, you collect GST, so it gets, if any expense that you pay, it gets offset against the GST that you collect in the commercial property. Let me give you an example. Let's say if you have a residential property which is giving you $500 per week rent, so that's $25,000, $26,000 yearly rent that you collect. And after 1 year, 2 years, let's say on the second year, you have to spend about $10,000 on something. Let's say you have to renovate the bath. That $10,000 that you spend, out of $10,000, probably $1,000, 10% is the GST that you have to pay. So that $1,000, which is like $10,000 is the actual expense plus 10% GST is the total $11,000. The total $11,000 you have to pay as an expense from your rent itself. You cannot, that 1,000 extra GST that you pay, it is also coming from the rent itself. Now the same thing, if you collect 25,000 rent from a commercial property, then chances are that you are also collecting GST based on what it is written in the lease. So $25,000 rent plus GST means you are also collecting $2,500 GST. Now if you are collecting the $2,500 GST, then you can offset that $2,500 with that $1,000 GST that you paid on the expense, assuming you spent $10,000 on fixing something. So now you understand that $25,000 plus GST is GST gets offset against your expenses. And this is just all the major expense I'm talking about. Even minor expenses in residential property, let's say your property management fee, it has a GST component. Any kind of tradies, any work that they do, they actually charge you GST. Even the gardener, lawn mowing, everything has a GST component. But those GST gets offset in commercial property with the rent GST that you collect, which is on top of the rent. Whereas in residential property, that is not the case, which is why in dollar to dollar term, you earn more, you get to keep more in commercial property rent as compared to residential, just with the GST point of view. So the reason that you would be looking more into commercial property is that commercial property has the GST that you collect from the tenant, whereas in residential property you do not collect GST. So any GST expense that you spend, it's actually doesn't get offset with the GST collections in residential property because there is no GST in residential property. I hope this motivates you to look into commercial property. This motivates you to see that yes, commercial property is for income, commercial property is a lucrative investment, and this is one of the reasons GST is a big factor of commercial property investment.